Where the hell have you been, bitch? My husband's voice cracked like a whip across the living room. My family, all 30 of them, froze in absolute silence, 30 pairs of eyes pinned on me. The New Year's Eve music was still playing softly in the background, but everyone had stopped talking, stopped laughing, stopped breathing. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, even dropped her champagne flute, the liquid soaking the tablecloth I had ironed myself that very morning. I stood in the entryway of my own home, grocery bags still dangling from my arms. I had just gotten back from a last-minute emergency run because we were short on ice, wine, and the jumbo shrimp his sister, Patricia, had specifically requested. I had driven like a maniac all over Houston on New Year's Eve, searching for open stores while they sat comfortably in my living room, drinking my champagne, waiting for me to serve them like their personal maid. But none of that mattered to Curtis. To him, I was always to blame for everything. And this time, he'd decided to humiliate me in front of his entire family on the most important night of the year. His mother, Carmen Thompson, sat in the best armchair, like the queen she imagined herself to be, and nodded her approval at her son's words. His older sister, Patricia, watched me with that contempt she'd perfected over 32 years. My own children, Curtis Jr., Denise, and Ethan, looked down, embarrassed, but not a single one spoke a word in my defense. Not one. "Told you so, Curtis," my mother-in-law muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That woman has never known how to keep up with her duties." Something broke inside me in that moment. It wasn't my heart. That had been broken years ago. It was something different. It was the very last thread holding me to the lie that this marriage, this family, was worth any sacrifice. Curtis got up from his seat, walked toward me with that superior expression I knew so well, and snatched the bags from my hands with such force he almost knocked me down. "Useless!" He spat the word right in my face. 32 years and you still haven't learned how to do things right. I was 63 years old. 32 years of marriage, 3 children I'd practically raised alone, a house I'd made a home with my own hands, a family business I'd helped build from the ground up. And in that moment, in front of his entire family, my husband called me useless. But what Curtis didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had just returned from more than the grocery store. I had just come from a meeting that would change absolutely everything. A meeting I'd kept secret for 6 months. A meeting that would turn this humiliation into the biggest mistake of his entire life. Because while they saw me as an old servant, without options, without power, without a voice, I knew something that would soon shake the foundations of everything they took for granted. That night, as I served the New Year's dinner, my hands trembling with contained rage as I listened to their laughter and their toasts in my house with my money, celebrating at the expense of my dignity, I was smiling on the inside, because in exactly 5 days, they would discover the truth. And when that happened, every single one of those insults, every humiliation, every hateful glance would cost them more than they could ever imagine. Before I continue with this story, which still makes me tremble when I remember it, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening to me from? Have you ever lived through something similar? Leave it in the comments because believe me, you are not alone. And if you want to hear real stories like this, stories of women who finally said, "Enough," subscribe to the channel because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Hit that like button if you've ever felt invisible in your own home. Now, let me tell you how all of this started, because to understand my revenge, you first need to know my hell. My name is Naomi Caldwell. But to be honest, I stopped feeling like Naomi a long time ago. I became simply Curtis's wife, the kid's mother, Mrs. Thompson's daughter-in-law. My name, my identity, everything slowly diluted over the years until nothing was left of the woman I once was. I'm 63, though people always tell me I look older. It's not a compliment when you know it's because of the worry lines, the sleepless nights, the tears that age you more than years do. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, into a humble but respectable family. My daddy was a carpenter, and my mother was a seamstress. They taught me that honest work and dedication to family were the most important values. I never imagined those same values would become the chains that tied me to a life of servitude. I met Curtis when I was 31. I was working as an accountant at a textile company. I was independent. I had my own apartment, my own dreams. He came in as the new operations manager, handsome, confident, with that smile that made me feel special. He courted me for 6 months with flowers, dinners, and promises of a life full of love and respect. We got married in 1993. It was a simple but beautiful wedding. I remember that day, as we danced our first dance, he whispered in my ear, "You're going to be the happiest woman in the world, Naomi. I promise you." How quickly promises are forgotten. The first few years were good, or at least I want to believe that. We moved to Houston, Texas for a job opportunity for Curtis. I gave up my job, my friends, my city, because that's what good wives do, right? They sacrifice, always sacrificing. In 1994, our first son, Curtis Jr., was born. In 1996 came Denise, and in 1998, Ethan. 3 pregnancies, 3 deliveries, 3 babies I raised practically alone while Curtis built his career. He worked late, went out on weekends with his partners, and traveled constantly. I stayed home changing diapers, mixing formula, and singing lullabies at 3 in the morning. "You're so lucky you get to stay home with the children," my mother-in-law, Carmen, would tell me every time we visited, as if being locked up within 4 walls, sleepless, without help, without a moment to myself, was a privilege and not a life sentence. But I endured, because that's what I had been taught too. Women endure, women are strong, women don't complain. When the children started school, Curtis decided to open his own business, an import and distribution company for fabrics, Thompson Textiles. "I need your help, honey," he said. And I, like the fool I was, thought we would finally be a team, that my work would finally be valued. I started working harder than ever before. I handled all the bookkeeping, managed the suppliers, organized the inventory, and solved all the legal and tax issues, all while still being a full-time mother, cook, housekeeper, and nurse when someone got sick. The business grew. In 5 years, we went from a small office to 3 warehouses and over 20 employees. I worked 12, sometimes 14, hours a day. I'd drop the kids at school at 7 in the morning. I'd go to the office, solve 1,000 problems, pick up the children at 2, fix them lunch, help with homework, take them to their activities, come back home, prepare dinner, clean up, and then, when everyone was asleep, I'd stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning, finishing the accounting on the dining room table. And you know how I appeared on the business's papers? As an administrative assistant, not even a partner. The business was in Curtis's name and his mother's. Carmen had put up the initial money, $50,000, that she never tired of reminding us about every time she saw us. "Thanks to me, y'all have this business," she'd constantly repeat. "Without my money, you would be nothing." $50,000. That's what she had invested. I had invested 15 years of my life, my knowledge, my health, my nights of sleep. But that didn't count. The years passed and things got worse. Curtis started coming home later and later. He smelled of perfume that wasn't mine. There were charges on the credit cards he couldn't explain, but when I asked, he would explode. "Now you're going to control me after everything I do for this family, after giving you this house, this life?" This house, as if I hadn't paid every cent of the mortgage with my work at the business. This life, as if I hadn't built it with my own 2 hands. And then the insults began. At first they were subtle, comments disguised as jokes. "Naomi is letting herself go, right?" he'd say in front of his siblings. "She's not the woman I married anymore." Later, they became more direct. "You're fat. You look old. You're not good for anything." And finally, they turned cruel. Words I won't repeat because they still hurt me deep down. My children grew up watching this, seeing their father treat me like trash, watching their grandmother and their aunts speak to me with contempt. And slowly, painfully, they also learned that this was the correct way to treat me. Curtis Jr. married a woman named Vanessa, a wealthy girl who, from day one, looked at me like I was the maid. My son let her treat me that way. More than that, he himself started talking to me with the same condescending tone. "Mom, why don't you fix more food when we come over? Vanessa says your seasoning is too plain. Mom, when you watch the kids, please don't give them so much sugar. Vanessa has a very specific nutritional plan. Mom, could you please not wear that perfume when you come to our house? It gives Vanessa a headache." Denise, my only daughter, the baby I had held to my chest, who had cried in my arms, who had come to me with every problem, every disappointment, every joy, she got married and moved to Dallas. We spoke once a month, if that. She was too busy with her wonderful new life, too busy for her mother. And Ethan, my baby, became an exact copy of his father. Cold, distant, critical. At 26, he still lived in our house without paying rent, without helping with anything, expecting me to do his laundry, make his food, and clean his room. The business continued to grow. Curtis opened a fourth warehouse, bought new trucks, and hired more personnel. And I was still there, working in the shadows, making everything run, without a single recognition, without an official salary, without anything. When I turned 60, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe Curtis would finally see me, appreciate me. I organized my own party, paid for the hall, hired the caterer, and bought my own cake. His entire family showed up. They ate, they drank, they had fun. Nobody gave me a gift, not a single one. Curtis stood up at the end of the night to give a toast. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would say something nice, something that recognized everything I had done. "To Naomi," he said, raising his glass, "who after 30 years finally learned how to organize a decent party." Everyone laughed, everyone toasted, and I smiled, because that's what they expected of me. Smile, always smile. That night, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew something had to change. I couldn't continue living like this. I didn't want to anymore. 3 months later, my daddy died. He left me a small inheritance, his modest bungalow in Memphis where I grew up, and some savings he had guarded all his life. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that changed everything. Because with that money, with that house, with that small independence, I began to wake up. I started remembering who Naomi Caldwell was before she became the shadow of Curtis Thompson. I started asking questions, reviewing documents, investigating, and planning. And what I discovered in those 6 months of silent investigation chilled me to the bone. But there were still 3 months until New Year's. 3 months for me to finish putting all the pieces in place. 3 months for Curtis to make the biggest mistake of his life by insulting me in front of his entire family. Because you see, while they saw me as an exhausted old woman, without options, without power, without a future, I was building my escape. I was documenting. I was preparing. I was waiting for the perfect moment. And that moment came on New Year's Eve, when Curtis called me woman, in that condescending tone, in front of 30 people in my own house. The months following my father's death were revealing in ways I never imagined. I started noticing things I had ignored before, or maybe just didn't want to see. Curtis no longer even bothered to hide his contempt. The insults became part of our daily routine, like saying good morning or good night. One Tuesday morning, we were having breakfast when I mentioned needing money to repair the washing machine. He laughed in my face. "And what do you think I give you a roof and food for? Use that inheritance from your daddy if you brag about it so much." I had never bragged about anything. I hadn't even told him the exact amount. But to him, the simple fact that I had something of my own was a threat. His family got worse too. His mother, Carmen, started showing up at my house unannounced, acting like she owned the place. She'd open my refrigerator, criticize my cooking, and check my cleaning like an inspector. "This house is a mess, Naomi. I don't know how Curtis stands living like this." A mess. My house, where every piece of furniture was in place, where the floors gleamed, where the towels were always clean and folded. But for her, it was never enough. It never would be. Curtis's sisters, Patricia and Monica, started organizing family gatherings without inviting me. They'd get together with their kids, with Curtis, with Carmen. They'd post the pictures on Facebook. I'd find out through social media that my own family had gone out to eat, gone to the movies, or celebrated a birthday. When I complained to Curtis, his response was devastating. "Well, you're just so boring, Naomi. Nobody wants to hang out with you. All you know how to do is complain and ruin the moment." Me, who had organized every birthday, every Christmas, every celebration for 30 years. Me, who had stayed up late making cakes, decorating, and cooking for 20 people. Now I was the boring one, the one who ruined the moment. But the worst didn't come from Curtis or his family. The worst came from my own children. Curtis Jr. and Vanessa had twins in March, beautiful babies who should have been my joy. Vanessa made the rules very clear to me right from the hospital. "Naomi, you can visit them on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. That's it. I need privacy and a routine with my babies. And please, give me 24 hours notice so I can prepare the house." Prepare the house, as if I were a stranger, as if I weren't their grandmother. When I protested, Curtis Jr. cut me off over the phone. His voice was identical to his father's, that cold, authoritative tone I knew so well. "Mom, those are Vanessa's rules. You follow them or you don't see the kids. It's that simple." That simple. My grandchildren used as blackmail, as a weapon. Denise in Dallas was worse because she pretended. She'd call me every 3 weeks, 10-minute conversations where she'd talk nonstop about her wonderful life, her wonderful husband, her wonderful job. When I tried to tell her something, anything, she'd interrupt. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry, but I gotta run. I have a meeting. Talk soon." She never visited. When I suggested going to see her, she gave 1,000 excuses. She was remodeling. She had too much work. The house was too small. Maybe next month. The next month never came, and Ethan, my baby, living under my roof, eating my food, using my electricity, my water, my internet. That same Ethan who, one Saturday morning, yelled at me because I hadn't ironed the shirt he needed. "You never do anything right. All you're good for is getting in the way." He was 26 years old. 26 years old, and he was yelling at me like I was his employee. And Curtis, sitting in the living room reading the paper, said absolutely nothing, not a word in my defense. At the business office, things also changed. Curtis hired a new woman, Lauren, as his personal assistant. 32 years old, beautiful, always perfectly made up. She started accompanying him to every meeting, every business trip. I stayed in the office doing the dirty work while they were having dinner at expensive restaurants with clients. The employees started whispering. I pretended not to hear, but I heard everything. The Fridays Curtis left early, the hotels he booked on the corporate credit cards, the expensive gifts that showed up on the statements. One afternoon in July, I walked into his office without knocking. Lauren was sitting on his desk. Curtis had his hand on her shoulder. They quickly separated when they saw me, but it was too late. I had seen enough. That night, I asked him directly, "Are you sleeping with her?" Curtis didn't even deny it. He looked at me with those cold eyes I no longer recognized and said something that still burns me up inside. "And what if I am? Look at you. Just look at yourself. Do you think a man like me can settle for a bitter old woman like you?" I gasped, literally ran out of air, 32 years together reduced to that. I was old, bitter, insufficient. 2 weeks later, I discovered something worse. Ethan asked to borrow my laptop because his had broken down. When he returned it, he forgot to close his email session, and I did something I never thought I would do. I read his emails. There was a conversation between him, Curtis Jr., and Denise. The subject line read, "Mom problem." Curtis Jr. had written, "She's unbearable now, always with that martyr face, making us feel guilty. Vanessa doesn't want her in the house anymore." Denise replied, "I can't stand her either. Every time we talk, it's nothing but drama. We should convince Dad to put her in a nursing home or something." And Ethan, my baby, my youngest son, wrote, I totally support it. She's so bitter that she contaminates everything. Besides, Dad could finally live his life with someone who makes him happy. My own children, my 3 children, planning to get rid of me like I was trash. I cried that night until I had no tears left. But after the tears came something different. Clarity came, rage came, determination came. Because as I read those emails, I remembered something. I remembered that the business, those 4 warehouses that were now worth millions, had been built with my work. I remembered that this house, where they all lived comfortably, was also in my name because we had bought it with a joint credit line. I remembered that I had access to all the bank accounts, all the legal documents, all the contracts. And I remembered something else, something I had discovered 3 weeks earlier while reviewing old business files. Something Curtis thought nobody knew, something that could completely destroy him. For years, Curtis had been diverting money from the business. Fake invoices, non-existent suppliers, secret accounts, over $1,500,000 hidden in offshore tax havens, all documented in files I had accidentally found in an old box in the warehouse. In that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to wait for them to value me. I was going to take what was mine. I was going to expose what was theirs. And I was going to walk out of this with my head held high. I secretly hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, the best family and tax law attorney in Houston, Mr. Sterling. I showed him all the documents. He confirmed what I suspected. Curtis was committing severe tax fraud, and I, as a de facto partner in the business, even if I wasn't on all the papers, was entitled to half of everything. I opened a new bank account in my name. I started discreetly transferring small amounts of money from our joint accounts. Nothing to raise suspicion, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. In 3 months, I had saved almost $20,000. I hired a forensic accountant, Ms. Chen, who meticulously reviewed all the business finances. We documented every irregularity, every fake invoice, every dollar diverted. And I waited. I waited for the perfect moment to act. September, October, November. The insults continued, the contempt continued, but I no longer cried. I smiled, I nodded, I kept playing my role as the submissive wife while building my arsenal inside. And then came December. Curtis decided we would host the New Year's dinner at our house. He invited his entire family, 30 people. "You better not make us look bad, Naomi," he warned me a week before. "I want this dinner to be perfect. And don't you dare complain about the work. It's the least you can do after everything I've given you." I just nodded, but inside, I was counting the days. Because on January 5th, I had a meeting scheduled with the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, a meeting where I would hand over all the documents related to Curtis's tax fraud. And on January 6th, my lawyer would file the most devastating divorce petition this man had ever imagined. But before that, I would have to endure one last humiliation, one last dinner, one last night pretending to be the perfect wife. I didn't know that humiliation would come in the cruelest way possible. I didn't know Curtis would call me woman in that degrading way in front of his whole family. But when he did, when I heard those words come out of his mouth, I knew the universe was giving me the perfect gift, the perfect justification, the perfect reason to destroy him without an ounce of guilt. That New Year's Eve, after serving dinner, after cleaning the dishes, after saying goodbye to the last guests who left my house at 3 in the morning without even thanking me, I sat alone in the kitchen. Curtis had gone to sleep without saying a word to me. Ethan was in his room. The house was silent. And I, with my hands still wrinkled from the hot dishwater, picked up my phone and wrote a message to my lawyer, Mr. Sterling. "Go ahead with everything. First thing tomorrow." His reply came in less than a minute. "Understood. Prepare yourself. This is going to change your life." I went to sleep in the guest room. I hadn't even shared a room with Curtis for 2 years. He had never protested. He was probably happy not to have to see me. But that morning, lying in that bed, I didn't feel sadness. I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt power. Because what Curtis didn't know, what none of them knew, was that over these last 6 months, I hadn't just been documenting his tax fraud. I had been building something much bigger. Let me tell you the complete truth. The truth that would change absolutely everything. When my daddy died and left me his modest bungalow in Memphis, he also left me something else. Something I discovered when I went to review his documents with my attorney. My daddy, that humble carpenter everyone thought barely scraped by, had owned 3 parcels of land in an area that was now premium commercial property in Memphis. 3 parcels of land that were currently worth $2,500,000. $2,500,000 that were completely mine, that Curtis didn't know existed, that didn't appear in any joint financial statement because I had inherited them after our marriage. But that wasn't all. Remember I told you I handled the business's accounting, that I organized everything, managed everything, solved everything? Well, what Curtis never understood is that when you handle the books for a company for 20 years, you know exactly where all the bodies are buried. And Curtis had a lot of bodies. He had diverted a total of almost $1,500,000 from the business over the past 10 years. Fake invoices to non-existent suppliers, overcharges on fictitious purchases, money that left the business and ended up in personal accounts registered in tax havens under the names of shell companies. I had copies of everything, every invoice, every transfer, every document. I had been meticulously saving them for months without him even suspecting it. More than that, I had discovered something that chilled me. The business, those 4 warehouses Curtis boasted about as his, didn't technically belong only to him. When the first partnership was registered back in 2001, I appeared as a partner with 40% of the shares. Curtis had 40%, and his mother had the remaining 20%. Over time, Curtis had been modifying the corporate bylaws, diluting my participation, making me sign documents I didn't read because I trusted him. By 2015, according to the official papers, I only owned 5% of the company. But here's the interesting part. Those modifications were never correctly registered with the State Registry of Commerce. There were inconsistencies, signatures that didn't match, and missing documents. My lawyer confirmed it to me. Legally, I was still the owner of the original 40% of the company. 40% of a business that was now valued, according to the latest assessments, at $6 million. That meant $2,400,000 of that company were legally mine, and Curtis had no idea. But there's still more, because the universe has mysterious ways of delivering justice. Remember Lauren, the young, pretty assistant Curtis was having an affair with? It turned out Lauren wasn't as dumb as he thought. Lauren was documenting things too, and when I contacted her in secret, when I offered her $5,000 for information, she sang like a canary. She gave me copies of emails where Curtis promised to leave his insufferable old woman to marry her. She gave me photos of the trips they took together, paid for with business money. She gave me receipts for an apartment Curtis had rented for their rendezvous, also paid for with corporate funds. And she gave me the jewel in the crown, audio recordings where Curtis talked about how he was going to get rid of me, how he was going to leave me with nothing, how he was going to put me in a home and keep everything. "I've already talked to my kids," Curtis said in one of the recordings while Lauren secretly recorded him. "They're all on board. As soon as she signs the papers for the new will, we're going to have her declared mentally incompetent. A couple of visits to the right psychiatrist, some senile dementia diagnoses, and that's it. She's institutionalized, and I administer all her assets." Listening to that recording made me sick to my stomach, but it also gave me something else. It gave me the absolute certainty that these people didn't deserve another second of my consideration, or an ounce more of my guilt. Throughout December, while they were planning my destruction, I finished building my perfect escape. I sold the 3 parcels of land in Memphis, $2,500,000, which I deposited into a bank account in the United States, completely legal, completely untouchable by Curtis. I hired not 1, but 3 lawyers, one specializing in family law, one in tax law, and a third in corporate law, all 3 working in coordination to build the strongest possible case. I made copies of absolutely everything: documents of the tax fraud, proof of the infidelity, audio recordings, emails, bank statements, contracts, Everything stored in 3 different locations: a safe deposit box at the bank, a private storage unit, and digital copies in the cloud. And on January 2nd, 2 days after Curtis called me that degrading name in my own house, I did something else. I went to my attorney and signed the divorce papers he had prepared, but not just any divorce. A divorce where I was demanding 50% of all marital assets, plus the legitimate 40% of the company, plus compensation for emotional distress, plus compensatory spousal support for 32 years of unpaid work. In total, I was suing for $8 million. On January 3rd, I went to the IRS offices with my forensic accountant, Ms. Chen. We delivered a 300-page file documenting every dollar Curtis had stolen from the government. Aggravated tax fraud, organized crime, money laundering. Crimes that could give him between 5 and 15 years in prison. And on January 4th, 1 day earlier than originally planned, my attorney filed the divorce petition in family court. Curtis would receive the official notification on the morning of January 5th. At the same time, the tax authority would be knocking on his office door with an audit order. But before that happened, on the night of January 4th, I decided to give him a little preview. I came home after having been at the doctor's all day, as I had told Curtis. He was in the living room watching television, drinking whiskey, probably thinking about Lauren. I sat down across from him. He looked at me with annoyance. "What do you want now?" I smiled. A calm, serene smile that unsettled him. "I just wanted you to know something, Curtis. Tomorrow, your life is going to change forever, and not in the way you expect." He laughed. That arrogant laugh I knew so well. "What the hell are you talking about? Have you really lost it now?" "Tomorrow morning, you're going to get 2 visitors. One from the IRS, the other from family court. I recommend you have a good lawyer on speed dial." His smile vanished. "What did you do?" "What I should have done 30 years ago. Woke up." I stood up and went to my room. I left him sitting there, face pale, trying to process what he had just heard. I didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, but out of the excitement of knowing that after 32 years of humiliation, after being invisible, after being mistreated, after being reduced to nothing, I was finally going to get my life back. And the best part was, they had no idea what was coming for them. The morning of January 5th arrived with a bright sun that seemed to mock what was about to happen. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning, took a long shower, and dressed in my best navy blue power suit, the one I had bought years ago for a wedding and never worn again. I carefully put on my makeup, did my hair, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I recognized the woman looking back at me. Curtis was still asleep, or maybe he was pretending to sleep. I didn't care. I prepared coffee, toast, and fruit. I set the table as if it were a normal day, as if my world wasn't about to explode in all of their faces. At 7:30, Curtis came downstairs. He looked awful. Deep circles under his eyes, his hair messed up, his face puffy. Clearly, he hadn't slept well after my little warning last night. "Naomi, about what you said yesterday. Your coffee is served." I interrupted him with a smile. "I made it how you like it, strong and black." He sat down at the table, suspicious, looking at me like I was a stranger. Maybe he was finally starting to understand that I was a stranger, one who had lived under his roof for 32 years. At 8:15, the doorbell rang. Curtis nearly spilled his coffee. I went to open it. 2 men in formal suits. One had a brown briefcase. The other had an ID clearly showing the IRS logo. "Is Mr. Curtis Thompson here?" "He is," I said, pointing to Curtis, who had stood up with a face as white as a sheet. "Please come in. Would you like some coffee?" The IRS men didn't want coffee. They handed Curtis an official notice. Order for an immediate audit of Thompson Textiles. Preventive freezing of corporate bank accounts. Demand for all fiscal documents from the last 10 years. "You have 24 hours to appear at our offices with your legal representative and all required documents," the man with the briefcase said. "Otherwise, we will proceed with a criminal complaint for alleged tax fraud." Curtis looked at me. The fury in his eyes was palpable, but there was something else, too. There was fear. The men left. Curtis exploded. "What in God's name did you do? Did you call them?" "I didn't call anyone, Curtis. I simply handed over documents. Documents that you created, invoices that you falsified, transfers that you made. I just made sure the relevant authorities knew about your creative accounting activities." He tried to come toward me. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. He had never done it before, but there was something savage in his eyes. I took a step back and pulled out my phone. "I recommend you don't do anything stupid, Curtis. I have this connected to record directly to the cloud. Anything you do will be documented and automatically sent to my lawyers." He stopped, his fists clenched, his jaw tight, but he stopped. "You're a snake." "No, Curtis. I'm a woman who finally learned how to bite back." The doorbell rang again. Curtis and I looked at each other. He knew what was coming. This time it was a court officer from family court, notification of divorce petition, lawsuit for $8 million, summons for a preliminary hearing in 15 days. Curtis read the documents with trembling hands. He flipped the pages faster and faster, his eyes jumping from one paragraph to another, his breathing accelerating. This is insane. You're completely crazy. You have no right to any of this." "I have a right to everything, Curtis, and I'm going to prove it with documents, with witnesses, with evidence. You're about to discover that the useless old woman knows exactly how the law works." The court officer left. Curtis collapsed onto the sofa, the notification still in his hands. "Why?" His voice was broken. "Why now? Why like this?" I sat across from him, calm, serene, with a peace I hadn't felt in decades. "Why? Are you really asking me why, Curtis? 32 years of insults, 32 years of humiliation, 32 years of working like a slave in your business without a dime of salary, 32 years of being invisible to you, to your children, to your family. And you ask me why? I gave you everything. This house, this life. You gave me nothing that I didn't build with my own hands. I paid for this house just as much as you did. I built that business just as much as you did. I raised those children alone while you were working or screwing around with your secretary." He turned red. How do you know about Lauren?" "Please, Curtis, everyone knew. The employees, your partners, probably even your mother. The only idiot who thought he was being discreet was you." He pulled out his phone and frantically dialed. I heard the voice of his lawyer, Mr. Ramirez, that mediocre lawyer who handled the business matters, on the other end. "Ramirez, I need to see you now. We have a huge problem. My wife, she's suing me for—" "Wait." He looked at the papers. "For $8 million, and the IRS is auditing the company. Yes, today, right now. Get over here immediately." While Curtis made his call, I received a text message on my phone. It was from Mr. Sterling, my lawyer. "Everything is in motion. Corporate accounts frozen. Audit activated. Your petition filed. Now comes the interesting part." The interesting part. That made me smile. Because you see, the plan didn't end there. That was just the first blow. The blow that woke them up, that put them on alert, that made them react predictably. Because I knew exactly how they would react. Curtis would call his children. His children would come running to protect their inheritance. His mother would come to insult and threaten me. They would all unite against me, just as they always had, and that was exactly what I needed them to do. At 11 a.m., Curtis Jr. arrived with Vanessa. They burst into the house like a hurricane, without knocking, without greeting me. "What in the world is going on, Mom?" my son yelled. "You've gone crazy. You're trying to destroy Dad." "I'm trying to get back what's mine." "Yours? None of this is yours. Dad built that business. Dad bought this house. You were just here playing the victim like always." Vanessa, standing behind him with her arms crossed, added venomously, "I knew you were a gold digger, Naomi. Always pretending to be the good one, the sacrificial one, just waiting for the moment to steal everything." I looked at both of them. This son who had come from my body, this woman I had welcomed into my family with open arms, and I felt absolutely nothing. No pain, no disappointment, nothing. "Are you finished?" I asked calmly. "We haven't finished. Are you going to withdraw this petition right now, or what?" "Or what, Curtis?" I interrupted him. "Or are you going to disinherit me? Or are you going to stop talking to me? Or are you going to continue treating me like you have for years? Go ahead. You have nothing to threaten me with because you've already taken everything you could take. My dignity, my self-esteem, my happiness. The only thing you haven't taken is my life, and believe me, you won't get that either." At 1 p.m., Carmen arrived with Patricia and Monica, the holy trinity of bitterness. "You wretch!" Carmen screamed as soon as she entered. "After everything this family did for you, this is how you repay us? Trying to steal my son's business? Your son stole over $1,500,000 from the government, Carmen. I'm just helping the law do its job." "Liar! My Curtis is an honest man." "Your Curtis is a tax felon, and I have the proof." Patricia approached me, her finger pointing at my face. "You were always resentful, a bitter woman who poisons everything. My brother should have left you years ago." "How strange," I calmly replied, "because for 32 years you were all happy taking advantage of this bitter woman, happy eating in my house, happy using my labor, happy insulting me to my face. But now that the bitter woman turns out to have teeth, you're all scared." Ethan arrived at 3 p.m. He didn't yell, he didn't insult, he just looked at me with a coldness that froze my blood. "You know what the worst part of all this is, Mom? It's not that you're suing Dad. It's not that you're destroying the family business. It's that you finally showed who you really are. A selfish, vindictive woman who's willing to sink her own family for money." "Interesting," I said, "that you call me selfish. Tell me, Ethan, how much rent have you paid in the last 5 years you've lived here? How much have you contributed to food, electricity, water, internet? How many times have you done your own laundry? But I'm the selfish one? You're my mother. You're supposed to serve you until the day I die, disappear when it's no longer convenient for you, let you put me in an assisted living facility as you planned so you could keep everything?" He turned pale. "How? I know everything, Ethan. The emails, the plans, the conversations with your siblings about the mom problem. Everything." Throughout the day, relatives, Curtis's friends, and business partners kept arriving, all with the same message. Naomi is crazy. Naomi is vindictive. Naomi is destroying the family. And I received them all with the same calm, the same serenity, because every insult, every threat, every attempt to make me feel guilty only confirmed that I was doing exactly the right thing. At 8 p.m., when everyone finally left, Curtis was left alone in the living room, defeated, aged 10 years in a single day. I approached him one last time. "This is just the beginning, Curtis. Tomorrow, your accountant is going to discover that the corporate accounts are frozen. The day after tomorrow, the suppliers are going to start calling, asking for payments. In 1 week, the scandal is going to be public. In 2 weeks, you'll probably have a formal criminal complaint. And in 1 month, when the judge reviews my petition and sees all the evidence, you will understand exactly how much it will cost you to have called me that degrading name in my own house." "Naomi, please, no." I cut him off. "There are no more pleases. There's no more negotiation. There are no more opportunities. You had 32 years of opportunities, and you wasted every single one of them." I went up to my room, packed a suitcase with the essentials, and I left. I went to a nice hotel in downtown Houston, a place where nobody knew me, where nobody judged me. That night, lying in a bed I didn't share with anyone, in a room that was completely mine, I slept better than I had in the last 10 years. Because finally, after so much time, I had stopped being a victim and become the protagonist of my own story. And the best was yet to come. 2 weeks passed, 2 weeks where I remained completely invisible to them. I didn't answer calls, I didn't reply to messages, I disappeared off the map while the chaos unfolded exactly as I had planned. Curtis had to hire an emergency tax attorney when Mr. Ramirez admitted that this was completely out of his league. It cost him $20,000 just for the retainer. The corporate accounts were still frozen. Suppliers started demanding payment. 3 of his best clients canceled contracts because the rumors of fiscal problems spread like wildfire in the Houston textile industry. I knew everything because my forensic accountant, Ms. Chen, had contacts everywhere. She sent me daily reports. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion, and I didn't feel a speck of guilt. The preliminary divorce hearing was scheduled for January 20th at 10 a.m. I arrived at the courthouse at 9:30. Pearl gray suit, discreet heels, my hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Mr. Sterling was waiting for me at the entrance with a confident smile. "Ready to make history, Mrs. Naomi?" "Ready to make justice." We entered the courtroom. Curtis was already there with his new lawyer, Mr. Torres, a man in his 50s with a shark-like face. Next to Curtis were his 3 children. Denise had flown in from Dallas especially for this. What dedication for someone who never had time for her mother. Curtis looked at me with such pure hatred I could almost feel it physically, but I also saw something else in his eyes. I saw fear. The judge entered, a man in his 60s with glasses and a serious demeanor. Judge Miller, known for being strict but fair. "Good morning. We are here for the preliminary hearing in the necessary divorce case, case number 2015-2025, Naomi Caldwell versus Curtis Thompson. The petitioner may proceed." Mr. Sterling stood up, opened his briefcase, and pulled out the first folder of evidence. "Your Honor, my client is requesting a necessary divorce based on multiple grounds: severe emotional abuse, proven infidelity, sustained psychological violence, and economic dispossession. We present the following evidence." For the next 30 minutes, my lawyer presented evidence after evidence. Photos of Curtis with Lauren in restaurants, in hotels, receipts for the apartment he rented for their meetings, bank statements showing personal expenses paid with corporate money. Curtis sank further and further into his chair with every document presented. But then came the part I was waiting for. Furthermore, Your Honor, we present evidence of asset fraud. Mr. Thompson modified the corporate bylaws of Thompson Textiles to reduce my client's ownership stake from the original 40% to only 5%, through documents that were never properly registered with the State Registry of Commerce. Curtis's lawyer immediately stood up. "Objection! Those documents were voluntarily signed by Ms. Caldwell at the time. She accepted—" "She was tricked," Mr. Sterling interrupted. "They were coerced into signing documents by being told they were routine administrative procedures. My client did not have her own legal representation at the time, and most importantly, those documents lack legal validity due to irregularities in their registration." The judge carefully reviewed the documents. He spent several minutes reading, comparing dates, and checking seals. "Continue, Mr. Sterling." "Thank you, Your Honor. Based on the original corporate constitution documents, my client is legally the owner of 40% of Thompson Textiles. Additionally, for 32 years, my client worked in said company without receiving a formal salary, without benefits, without labor recognition. We are demanding compensation for work performed, plus the recognition of her legitimate share ownership." Then Mr. Sterling pulled out another folder. This one was thicker, and when he opened it, I watched Curtis turn completely pale. "Additionally, Your Honor, we have evidence that the respondent and his adult children plan to have my client declared mentally incompetent in order to institutionalize her and appropriate her assets." He placed the audio player on the table and pressed play. Curtis's voice filled the courtroom. "I've already talked to my kids. They're all on board. As soon as she signs the papers for the new will, we're going to have her declared mentally incompetent. A couple of visits to the right psychiatrist, some senile dementia diagnoses, and that's it. She's institutionalized, and I administer all her assets." The silence in the room was deafening. My 3 children had red faces and were staring at the floor. Curtis looked like he was about to vomit. The judge stopped writing and looked directly at Curtis. "Is that your voice, Mr. Thompson?" Curtis did not answer. His lawyer touched his arm, urging a response. I was upset. It wasn't serious. It wasn't serious to plan to declare your wife incompetent in order to steal her assets? The judge's voice had a steel edge. Continue, Mr. Sterling. Your Honor, we also present evidence that Mr. Thompson is under investigation by the tax authority for alleged aggravated fraud. We have copies of fake invoices, transfers to shell companies, and fund diversion exceeding $1,500,000. Curtis's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Torres? Curtis's lawyer looked defeated. He knew there was no possible defense against this avalanche of evidence. Your Honor, we request a recess to consult with our client. Denied. The respondent will have the opportunity to present his defense at the next hearing. For the moment, based on the evidence presented, I issue the following precautionary measures. The judge dictated for the next 10 minutes, prohibition of asset transfer, prohibition for Curtis Thompson to approach within 100 yards of Naomi Caldwell, provisional spousal support of $6,000 per month, which Curtis must pay me while the process lasts. And best of all, a judicial receiver for Thompson Textiles until the stock situation is clarified. When the judge finished, Curtis finally exploded. This is an injustice. She's stealing from me. I worked for 32 years to build that business, and this witch wants to take it away from me. Mr. Thompson, the judge banged his gavel. One more outburst, and I will find you in contempt. You are being given every procedural guarantee. If you don't like how things are going, present me with proof at the next hearing. Until then, be silent. Curtis slumped into his chair, defeated. His children looked at him with a mixture of shame and panic. Denise had tears in her eyes, but not from sadness for me, but from fear of what this meant for her inheritance. The session is adjourned. Next hearing in 1 month. We left the courthouse. On the steps, Curtis caught up with me. His lawyer tried to stop him, but he pushed him aside. Naomi, please, we can fix this. It doesn't have to be this way. We can negotiate. We can... No. My voice came out firm, without a trace of doubt. There is no negotiation, not after 32 years. Not after New Year's Eve, not after planning to declare me mentally incompetent to rob me. No, Curtis, it's over. But you'll destroy your own children. The business is their future, their inheritance. Their inheritance, I repeated slowly. How interesting that you care about them now. Where was that concern when they were planning to declare me incompetent? Where was it when you called me that name in front of your whole family? Where was it when your children said I was a nuisance that had to be eliminated? Curtis Jr. approached, his face red with fury. Mom, stop it! You've made your point. Now stop this before it's too late. I looked at him. This son who had grown in my womb, this man who was so much like his father in all the worst ways. No, son, no. What's too late is your chance to treat me like a human being. You had 32 years. You wasted them. Now live with the consequences. Denise approached me, crying, Mom, please. We're your family, your blood. You can't do this to us. You are not my family, Denise. Family doesn't treat its own this way. Family doesn't plan to declare its mother demented to steal from her. You are strangers who share my last name. Nothing more. Ethan, the only one who hadn't said anything, finally spoke. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up alone, bitter, with no one. I smiled, a genuine smile that probably disconcerted them more than anything else. Ethan, I was already alone. I was already bitter. The difference is that now I'm alone by choice, not by abandonment, and the bitterness is leaving me with every step I take away from you. I turned and walked toward the car where Mr. Sterling was waiting for me. Behind me, I heard shouts, pleas, threats. I did not turn around a single time. In the car, my lawyer looked at me with respect. Mrs. Thompson, that was masterful. The judge is clearly on our side. The next hearing is a mere formality. We've won. No, counselor, I corrected him. I won, and I didn't win the money or the business. I won something much more valuable. I won my dignity back. That afternoon, back at my hotel, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Lauren, Curtis's ex-mistress. Mrs. Caldwell, I just wanted you to know something. Curtis called me. He offered me money to say I falsified the recordings, that you paid me to lie. I told him to go to... Why are you telling me this? Because when I told him no, he threatened me. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would ruin my life. And that's when I understood you were right about him. He's a monster who hides who he is very well. Thank you for calling, Lauren. No, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for showing me that monsters don't deserve another second of our time. I hung up the phone and looked out the hotel window. The sun was setting over Houston, painting the sky orange and pink, and for the first time in 32 years, I felt completely free. 6 months have passed since that hearing. 6 months that have changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. The divorce was finalized in March. The judge ruled in my favor on absolutely everything. He awarded me 50% of the marital assets, which included the house where I lived for 32 years. Curtis had to buy me out of my share or sell it. He chose to sell it. He couldn't stand the idea that I owned something he considered his. I was also legally recognized as the owner of 40% of Thompson Textiles. Curtis tried to appeal, but with the judicial receiver documenting all the irregularities he found, he had no chance. We ended up reaching a settlement. He bought my stake for $2,800,000. $2,800,000 that were added to the $2,500,000 from my father's inheritance. $5,300,000. That was my new reality. The IRS concluded its investigation. Curtis faced charges for tax fraud. He reached an agreement with the authorities to pay a huge fine and back taxes, thus avoiding jail. But the scandal destroyed his reputation in the Houston textile world. He lost 60% of his clients. He had to close 2 of his 4 warehouses. My children tried to contact me for months. Calls, texts, emails. They even showed up at my new apartment, a beautiful penthouse condo in a residential area of Houston that I bought with my money. I didn't open the door. Denise finally wrote me a letter. A long letter asking for forgiveness, saying she understood my pain and begging me to give her a chance to rebuild our relationship. I read it once and then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll be ready to forgive. Maybe someday I can look at them without feeling that mix of sadness and relief. But that day is not today. Curtis Jr. lost his job at the family business when Curtis had to cut staff. I heard through others that he and Vanessa are having marital problems. Apparently, when the money runs out, the love evaporates too. Ethan finally had to get a job. He had to rent his own apartment. He had to learn how to cook, wash his clothes, and pay his bills. All those things I used to do for him while he called me useless. Carmen suffered a mild heart attack in April. I heard she is now living with Patricia because Curtis can no longer afford to keep her in her house with a full-time maid. I wonder if Patricia treats her with the same devotion she expected from me. I doubt it. As for me, I moved back to Atlanta, my home state. I bought a beautiful house near the historic center, with a yard and a fountain full of light and space. A house that is completely mine, where no one yells at me, where no one insults me, where no one expects me to serve and clean. I opened a small consulting business for female entrepreneurs. I use my decades of experience to help other women understand their finances, protect themselves legally, and not make the mistakes I made. It's rewarding in ways I never experienced at Curtis's business. I reconnected with friends from my youth, friends I had abandoned when I got married and moved to Houston. We go out to eat, we go to the movies, we travel together. For the first time in decades, I have a social life that doesn't revolve around serving my husband's family. 2 weeks ago, I turned 64. My friends threw me a surprise party. There were flowers, music, laughter, and genuine hugs. They sang happy birthday to me and gave me gifts picked out especially for me. And when I blew out the candles on my cake, I didn't make a wish because finally, I don't need to wish for anything anymore. I have everything I need. This morning I received a text message from an unknown number. It was Curtis. Naomi, I need to talk to you, please. It's about something important. I didn't reply. I blocked the number because there's nothing Curtis can tell me that I need to hear. That chapter of my life is closed, sealed, archived somewhere in my memory where it can no longer hurt me. Sometimes when I'm sitting in my yard in the evenings, having a cup of tea and reading a book, I wonder what my life would have been like if I had had the courage to leave earlier, if I had said enough at 40, at 50, at 60. But then I remember something my lawyer told me after the final divorce hearing. Mrs. Caldwell, the right time is when you decide it's the right time, not before, not after. You did what you had to do when you were ready to do it. He was right. Maybe I needed to live those 32 years of hell to value this new life of peace. Maybe I needed to hit rock bottom to find the strength to get up. Maybe I needed to lose everything to discover that I had never truly had anything worthwhile. Now I am 64 years old. Some might say I started late, that I wasted my youth, that I lost the best years of my life. But I don't see it that way. I see that I have, with luck, 20 or 30 more years of life, and these years are going to be completely mine. They will be years of dignity, of respect, of peace. They will be years where I decide what I do, when I do it, and who I do it with. And that's not losing. That is winning. If you are listening to me and going through something similar, if there is someone in your life who makes you feel small, invisible, useless, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and it is never, ever too late to take your life back. It doesn't matter if you are 40, 50, 60, or 70 years old. It doesn't matter if you have been in a toxic relationship for 10 or 40 years. It doesn't matter if you have money or not. What matters is that you are worthy, your dignity is worthy, your peace of mind is worthy, and nobody, absolutely nobody, has the right to take it away from you. It took me 32 years to learn that. I hope it doesn't take you as long as it took me. And if you decide to take that step, if you decide to say, enough, if you decide to take back your life, I want you to remember something. Fear is normal, guilt is normal, doubt is normal. But on the other side of that fear, that guilt, that doubt, is the version of you that you deserve to be. It is the life you deserve to live. It's worth it, I promise you. It is absolutely worth it. Now, if you liked this story, if you identified with it, if you know someone who needs to hear it, share it, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories of women who said, enough. And above all, leave your story in the comments. Tell me what you're living through. Tell me what you decided to do, because you are not alone. You are never alone. And remember, you are not old. You are not useless. You are not invisible. You are a woman with a whole life ahead of you, a life that is yours, only yours, and no one can take it away from you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here. And thank you for reminding me that my story, however painful it may have been, can help someone else find their way to freedom. See you in the next story. Until then, take care, value yourself, and never ever let anyone dim your light.